Welcome to Mentor. I'm Rachel Forde.
And I'm Marco Bertozzi, and we are the founders of TheZoo.London, the consultant collective and executive search business.
And our podcast is all about sharing world-class wisdom from those who have been there, done it, and are here to guide you.
And today's guest is absolutely one of those people. Sir Martin Sorrell joined us, obviously very well known to anyone in the advertising industry. I think on a personal level, he's always been this
part of the
huge
industry,
character for us over our whole careers. So to have him in our little studio today was just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so it's an amazing conversation. And we always ask biggest fuck up. I think actually Sir Martin's was an education in business and financing. So listen out to what he learned from that. And also what I was really fascinated with, and you'll get to know this very, very quickly, what WPP stands for. And it's still part of that brand from its heritage. It's interesting to hear. And also Sir Martin's latest venture, S4 Capital, also has not just a business meaning, but a very sentimental meaning as well. So coming up, let's dive in, shall we?
Well, we're going to just let people know we've made this an extended version. So it's a little bit longer.
Yes, yeah.
But what you must listen to the end, because I have a studio full of crying senior executives that I had to handle.
Hey, Marco, when you think of a great mentor, what words come to your mind?
I think smart, definitely supportive, obviously wise and experienced for sure.
Yeah, I think the same really. And, you know, someone knowledgeable who pushes your ideas beyond your first ideas.
You know, that's why we chose Viral Tribe, because they've helped us on our podcasting journey.
Yeah, you could say they've been our podcasting mentors, couldn't you?
They most definitely
have been our ultimate support system, helping us with creative ideas, production. And with state-of-the-art studios like we're in today in the heart of Soho, London, they're not just brilliant at what they do, but they make the whole process seamless and stress-free.
And you know, they work with some of the biggest creators, producers and brands, making everything from chart-topping shows to branded entertainment.
So if you're thinking about launching a video, an audio, a live podcast, make Viral Tribe your podcasting mentor.
Drop them a line at hello@viraltribe.co.uk, and if you quote mentor, they'll give you 20% off your first 3 bookings.
So what are you waiting for?
Is it?
What are you
That's
waiting
good.
for? Let's get Sir Martin in. Come on, Sir Martin, welcome.
Today we welcome a true giant of the advertising world, and I'm
not a giant, only 5 foot 5'6". 5'6".
You're a giant in our eyes.
Same height as Napoleon, would you believe? Yeah,
well,
exactly the same height as Napoleon.
You've achieved nearly the same, so there we go. We are unashamedly going to read this introduction because we don't want to get it wrong. So, Sir Martin Sorrell, founder and executive chairman of S4 Capital, and I believe the S4 is 4 generations.
Yes, although you could claim it's 5 actually at the end now, but we maybe should alter it to S4/5. So, well, no, but it takes into account grandparents through to grandchildren. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, it's nice. I think it's because it's got a bit of a corporate sound to it, but then when people discover it's got sentimental, that's nice.
I wanted to call it by my father, because my father changed his name. His name was a different name when he landed with his parents, or his parents landed in 1899. We think from Ukraine here in the UK. I wanted to call it by my previous name, but members of my family said no.
We're not going to do that. Well, S4 has got a good ring to it.
You've got to listen to the family, haven't you?
Yeah.
So, born in London in 1945. It's interesting you mentioned Ukraine. Born of a family of, would we say Russian immigrants, or do you say Ukrainian?
Well, I think we're not 100% sure, but we think Ukrainian, probably.
Yeah.
50%. And then on my mother's side, Polish and Romanian.
Right. Okay.
My father used to call the Romanian gypsy in my mother.
So Sir Martin's early influences came from his father, a self-made electronics retailer who instilled in him the values of hard work, persistence and speed. After studying at Cambridge and earning an MBA from Harvard, Rachel also went to Cambridge, by the way. She doesn't like saying that, but there we go.
I haven't got an MBA from Harvard.
Which college were you at?
I was at Homerton.
Okay.
Yeah.
The women's college.
Well, I was, exactly.
Yes, the
But
women's
yeah,
college.
fond memories.
No
of
longer
Cambridge.
now. It's mixed now.
Yeah,
Isn't
it is. It is. Yeah, they let men in eventually.
Sir Martin began his career in the ad world at Saatchi & Saatchi, and we'll come back to that. In 1985...
I didn't actually. I started in... First job was in consulting, marketing consulting,
yes,
Glendenning,
right.
and then I went to McCormack.
That's right.
on,
Yeah, you were nearly going to work.
Get your
And then
facts right,
Gulliver,
Marco.
then James Gulliver, and then we went into the ad business because James had that stake in Gull and
Well, the
Compton.
great thing is we're going to give you an opportunity to talk through this in a second. I don't know if
You're telling me to shut up, Paolo.
No, just say
you haven't read the brief, I'm sure, but we'll come back to that. So in 1985, you took a leap that would define your life's work, buying a small manufacturer called Wire and Plastic
A
Products.
stake in, yeah,
Which
with a
stake?
partner called Preston Rubble. We were issued 29.9% because you'd have to make a standby takeover if you went over 29.9%, and we didn't have the funding to do that. So we were partners in it. I actually had about, I think it was 16%. Preston had about 14%, and we didn't have to do a standby offer, but we took a stake in the company for cash. Wire basket manufacturer.
I know what WPP. I never knew that. That's going to be fascinating.
Wire and Plastic Products it stands for. Isn't it ironic that what was the world's largest advertising, and they haven't changed the branding. There was a guy actually in campaign. They were asked, I can't remember, they were asked about the branding of WPP, with all the current travails as to what they should do. And somebody suggested, why don't you make it into a really famous advertising brand, Ogilvy? I mean, God knows what the other brands would have said, but it is ironic that WPP has survived all the slings and arrows, and Wire and Plastic Products used to rule the world, doesn't anymore, but used to rule the world.
And
I think that is a good that is
good.
ironic.
There's probably
yes.
80,000. There's probably 80,000 people that work there that don't know.
100,000.
They wouldn't know that, yeah.
No, but that don't know that
Oh,
what
yeah.
WPP stands for.
But
So
the thing is now from Group M to WPP.
Maybe we
Media.
should rename it Wire and Plastic Products.
Yeah,
and
that's
do you?
a thought.
This is we haven't even got through the intro yet, but do you? And not talking about like the real business context of it all, and you leaving there and all that sort of stuff. But do you you did describe, as we did listen to your Desert Island Dish, you talked about it as sort of bringing up a child or a baby or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that child now? Like
It's abused,
yeah. So you think of it more as how it's being run.
very beaten up.
But are you still do you still see it as a, like, you'll choose WPP over Publicis, let's say, in a pitch?
No, I think I don't know, if I was a client, I probably wouldn't, given current performance. No, it's a difficult one to answer. I mean, I think, and obviously this is a subjective comment, and it's emotional, but I think wrong strategy, wrong leadership, wrong structure, gone down the wrong rabbit hole. I think could have been done differently. I think the fundamental issue is destroy. We're meant to be in the brand building business, and you two were in the brand building, but you still are. But you were in it from an agency point of view. And clients think we know the value of brands, and to have decapitated J. Walter Thompson, Y&R, Gray, Wunderman, even an AKQA in the way that's been done, I think is negligent, frankly. It's all very well. I mean, you have this clash of digital versus traditional, but to put, a brand like VML on top of a Wunderman, a Y&R, and a JWT just doesn't make any sense. Stanley Reiser will be spinning in his grave. I think Jeremy Bullmore would be spinning, and Stephen King would be spinning in their graves. But it's sort of, actually, it's interesting. I mentioned Stephen and Jeremy. When we took over JWT in 1987, Jeremy and Stephen were on their way out. They were the previous generation, and the young Turks, Miles and Alan Thomas, were keen to push them out because they were the new generation. And I sort of get that. But, I went to Jeremy and I went to Stephen and I said, it seems to me that it's crazy to jettison your knowledge, your experience. And we actually put the two of them on the board as non-executive directors. Jeremy stayed on pretty much until the day he died. And Stephen a little bit different, sort of retired before he died. But they were enormous reservoirs of knowledge, strength and ability and advice. Jeremy was in our building in Park Street, and I used to go down and talk to him whenever we were inundated with issues. And he would be very practical but very learned, and of course was a brilliant writer. He's still, to my mind, is the very best writer on our industry. His essays, apart from the fact that each essay had a serious point to it, were hysterically funny. Yeah. I mean, I can remember stuff about pitching and, enormously clever. Now, that to me is emblematic of what I'm saying about to toss out, hundreds of years. It's a bit like, I was inquiring actually recently about what they've done with the historic correspondence inside, and I'm assuming that many of the archives have been destroyed. It's a Luddite attitude. If you think about that stuff, if you could digitize it, or create a Bullmore LLM, if you like, or a Stephen King LLM, or a Stanley, it's huge. Yeah. It's huge. Or David Ogilvy, right? Yeah. So the value of these brands, even in a digital thing. So okay, I get it. VML is a digital brand. AKQA is a digital brand, but the greatest strength is in their history and development. So you could have John Cook as head of the business, but you don't call it VML, which is a brand that resonates only in Kansas City. So Taylor Swift might know about it, or Kelsey, but very few else. Certainly don't know about it in Australia or Argentina or other Eastern Europe or wherever it happens to be. So I think that's a tragic error. And I know that's a strange thing to say in an AI age, but the value of these brands, we're meant to know about brands and we should do. And I think that's demonstrates that we don't. So when I look at it, I think about the value that resides in those brands.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm going to keep going with this. I'm going to cut some out because
this is only the intro.
We haven't even got to go. So, but I do want to say, so you left WPP because there are, God forbid, people who don't know your backstory.
I mean, everybody should.
You left WPP in 2018 and launched S4 Capital, a obviously digital marketing group, and that was very much about disrupting again the industry. And I think if we were to sum it all up, from boardroom battles to billion-dollar deals, Sir Martin's journey is a masterclass in vision, tenacity.
It's not about a masterclass. We've had our ups and our downs.
Well, you're allowed ups and downs. You're allowed ups and downs. Can't we? And reinvention, which is, a very key topic. So we're going to explore that a little bit today, aren't we?
Yeah, and we did it. You did it, Marco. And my bit was just to say, look, honestly, we really value your time here. Like we do talk about masterclass. You talk about that wisdom and that knowledge that we're just losing in this industry, which is why Mark and I wanted to do this podcast in the first time, because actually mentorship and advice through your career stories, people found that very valuable. And I also wanted to point out, because this isn't the first time we've sat on the end of a table. We once sat with Tony Blair.
Don't pretend to remember.
So it was Tony Blair, Lloyd Embley, editor-in-chief of Trinity Mirror at the time, Steve King, and we were all at a private dining room in the Delaunay. But we were, I think, that slightly bigger than this space, but we have we've sat together before, Martin, and we just wanted to say thank you.
What were you talking about with Tony Blair?
Well, I asked him a question around Cool Britannia, actually at the time of his reign. I said reign.
This was when he was PM.
No, so it was about before? 10 years ago. I reckon it was about 2017, about that time. Okay. And I was thinking, actually, maybe, Oasis is back. Could Tony Blair come back?
Well, actually, it's funny.
He could do the Tony Blair comeback.
Funny you say that. I really wanted him to come back. If he had come back,
there was a moment where
I think there was a moment. There was a moment where it was suggested. But I think he should take over the World Economic Forum. That's my view. The TBI, the Tony Blair Institute, has got I think about 1,000 people, and that's gone through a few sort of perils of Pauline recently, and I think Tony really should take the World Economic Forum by the scruff of its neck and merge it in with the Blair. I think he would do a super job, and it would give him. And there was a rumor. I don't know if I'm being indiscreet, but I'll be indiscreet. There was a rumor that Klaus Schwab did speak to him many years ago about after he was PM about becoming the CEO of the World Economic Forum, and he turned it down because the salary wasn't big enough, apparently. But he was offered about $750,000 or whatever it is.
I would have taken
but I actually think it would be super good if he did, actually, because I think it would give him. He has a great platform and he's done a great job already, but I think it would give him an even better platform, and it needs rebooting.
Well, he's got charisma. He could connect, and he had a brilliant advertising campaign around Cool Britannia, and actually put Britain back.
I think the thing is,
Labour Isn't Working was a better campaign.
Yes, actually, that was.
So
anyway,
come back, Charlie.
Yeah, we'll get them.
Jeremy Sinclair.
This one is going to be a bit tricky, but we on every podcast we give you the opportunity to talk through your career, and we say in 60 seconds because we want to give people a chance to sort of know your stages. We've had a whole range. Steve King took about 45 minutes.
So don't take 45 minutes.
Some people.
Well, I'll do it very briefly.
A few minutes.
All right. So I start at Henley's Corner, northwest London, in the ghetto, Queensborough Court, the block of flats still standing, which was bombed in the war. I start there. I then graduate. I spend a term at Hasmonean Prep School, Jewish prep school. Only one term. Go to Goodwin School because my parents go up in the world and move from Henley's Corner to Mill Way and Mill Hill. I go to Goodwin. I then go against their will because that was a feeder to Mill Hill School to Haberdashers Prep. Go to Haberdashers Senior School. I start at Cricklewood. I then go to Elstree. I meet Simon Sharma there, lifelong friend, who's been far more successful than me now as a historian. Also a Knight of the Realm, which is nice. And then I go to Cambridge with Simon. Actually, we go to Christ College, Cambridge. He does history and does spectacularly well. I stumble through my tutu and then go to Harvard Business School. And then from Harvard, I always wanted to go into consulting, and I go to Glendenning Associates. But then there's the draft, and my mother says there's no way that you're going to end up in Fort Dix, New Jersey, or Vietnam, so you have to come home. So I met Mark McCormack at business school. He was a subject matter of one of the case studies in Management of New Enterprises, a second-year elective on entrepreneurs, always successful ones. There was only one failure, and that was a boat builder in New England, I remember. Anyway, then worked for Mark, then really tried to do something with my dad. I had a very close relationship with my dad, but it was an absolute abject disaster. If I have one regret, it's that didn't work out. Because, I used to speak to my dad, even in the height of the hostile takeovers for JWT and Ogilvy. I used to speak to him about, before the time of mobile phones, I would speak to him about 5-10 times a day, literally, for advice. And he was a retailer. He didn't know about advertising, but he knew about people. So anyway, tried to do something with my dad, had met James Gulliver. James Gulliver hired me as his personal financial advisor. Wasn't that really? I was his gopher. I was his bag carrier. And one of the investments he made was in Garland Compton. Ken Gill was chairman. Ken was looking for a creative impetus to an agency that did Procter and Eli Lilly, I think Johnson & Johnson and others. Had come into contact with the Saatchi brothers. The Saatchi brothers reversed themselves in. James had a stake in it, which he sold, actually. But he couldn't understand how assets per share went down and earnings per share went up. So he's on the deal with Morris & Charles. I got to know Morris & Charles. We did consulting. Morris was looking for a CFO. The headhunter said, "Have you thought about Martin?" He said no. Because the headhunter said to him, "What sort of person do you want? Somebody like Martin?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Why didn't you ask Martin?" And that was it. And so I became CFO. Lasted from about 78 to 85, about 7-8 years. And in 85, my father's advice had always been find an industry you enjoy, find a company in it you enjoy, build a reputation, which doesn't mean come and do your podcast, but means that people know about you and sort of respect you. And then if you fancy having a go, around the age of 40, actually, he said, is what I did. Because in his time, your working life was from 20 to 60. So before you have a go. So I met up with Preston Rabel, stockbroker. We took a stake in Wire and Plastic Products. We went down to the wire works in Dagenham. Or, no, not Dagenham. Where was it? It was in East London. And Gordon Sampson was the chairman. Gordon, bought companies out of bankruptcy. Basically, Gordon took a shine to us, and the rest is history. And then we built, went from Saatchi's, which was when I was CFO with Morris and Charles, Tim Bell, Jeremy Sinclair, Bill Muirhead. I think Stephen King actually was there as well. We got fed up and went off to Publicis. But we built Saatchi's to the world's biggest advertising agency. And then we started in 85 and built WPP into it. And then in 2018 left and started S4. So that's it.
I know. Well, you did. You accelerated the last 30 years.
And in the meantime, 4 kids now. And 7 grandchildren, which probably is the more important part of whatever.
Well, I think we're going to come to that.
Because it's when highly successful, 5 decades in the business. I think
we have to say, on the grounds of truth in advertising, that we've had our ups and our downs.
Yeah, and look, and that's what you learn from you learn from your mistakes more than you do your successes. But I suppose my question is, and I'm sure a lot of people listening would go, well, why do you keep going? Why don't you just go and get
keeps me occupied?
Is it and is it?
Well,
is
I
it
don't like golf.
Okay.
I went on a trip with one of my sons to Northern Ireland, a friend of his, because he's a golf nut. And I can see the charm of it. I work for Mark McCormack, so I work for Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, and Jack Nicklaus, and Tony Jacklin, and Peter Oosthuis, and all those people. Clive Clark, if you remember those people. But I thought golf is an old man's game, and it's not. I like cricket. Yeah. Played cricket until recently, not very well. I was the sort of Geoffrey Boycott type, not Kevin Peterson or Len Hutton, not sort of Gary Sobers. So a plodder, basically. But no, I just find it interesting. I think it does keep your mind active. I think a lot of people in our industry in America sort of retired to Florida, and the number of people that have said to me that they regret that they're in Tampa or Boca Raton or wherever it happens to be.
You can get bored and fat.
Yes, you get bored. Yeah, so what the hell do you do?
Yeah.
And the normal was to retire when, my dad said, he was thinking about a working life from 20 to 60. Yeah. With longevity now, we might live till we're 100, 120, 150. But it's a different, retiring at 60 or 65, I think the French retirement age is 55. Yeah. It's just too early, and people are living longer. They will live longer as a result of the revolution that's taking place in pharmaceuticals driven by AI. The innovation around cancer, and I've had cancer myself, and the innovation around that is extraordinary. So I think being willing to work longer, and I think it keeps you mentally and physically more in touch. Well, I think it just keeps you going. I think otherwise you vegetate.
Is there obviously we don't know what your routine looks like, but I guess from the outside, there's a difference between the sort of 10 o'clock train in chairman role where you're sort of hovering around a bit and whatever, versus on it, travel, stress.
Well, I mean,
where does that?
I don't think there's any such a stress. It's just you're not enjoying yourself.
Right?
Yeah,
you're not having fun. I mean, stress is because you're not enjoying what you're doing, or you find it taxing. No, I still my schedule is still like get up at 6, probably go to bed around. I like to I used to like to going to bed with Emily Maitlis on Newsnight.
Oh, yeah.
You can't go to bed with Emily Maitlis anymore. But I usually finish off with if I'm in the UK and Newsnight. If I'm in the US, used to be Charlie Rose, but he's gone, unfortunately. So it might be Squawk Box or the equivalent in the US. But no, I still have a very full day. I'm going off traveling shortly for a few days. So I still have a similar schedule, and I still enjoy it. I mean, I do like seeing what's happening in other parts of the world. And, I spent a lot of time recently in South America. I'll be spending a lot of time in Asia and in Europe. Going to September, October, there's a lot actually going on in Europe. Less so in Africa. A fair amount in the Middle East, because Middle East is a growth spot. Yeah. So, I like North America, South America, the Middle East, and APAC, Asia, I'm a big fan of. I think, actually, it's an interesting thing in relation to WPP. You have to remember that WPP is probably still stronger outside the US than it is in the US. I mean, one of the strengths that Publicis and Omnicom have as a result, will have in even greater as a result of the IPG merger, is a strength in the US. I think Omnicom and IPG will be 57% when they combine in the US. Publicis is probably around 60%. One of the things that WPP is really wrestling with is a weakness in the US. And I think even when I was there, our overseas operation, you remember when Amazon awarded their media business, they gave America to Omnicom and outside America to WPP. And the argument was WPP is better outside America. Coca-Cola said the same thing. They said when they awarded the media originally, although it's changed recently in North America, they said WPP is better outside America, and that's why they defeated Publicis or whatever it was. It's come back to bite them a bit now, but I think so. Getting that, I really enjoy India. I love China. I love. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. I think they're wonderful people, and I think the economies are wonderful. And there are other places like Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, the Philippines, that the CEOs of many of the holding companies haven't even visited.
I was going to say, you need to be on the ground. Is that what you'd like to
exactly.
connect with the people?
No, I think, yeah. I mean, often the CEOs say they like to lead from the front.
Yes.
And they like to be in pitches, and then the reality is very, very different, actually, if you talk to the people inside the company. But I think it's super important. I mean, in India, we built a business through consolidation, because Ogilvy and Thompson had been there for many, many years on the back of Unilever. But we built a business, along with Gray and Y&R, which had 50% market share. I think they still do. In China, which WPP is going through a hell of a problem at the moment, we had 16,000, 17,000 people, including Kantar, and we had a third of the market. I mean, that's truly remarkable, even if I say so myself, that we managed to carve out one third, a foreign company in China, one third of the market, and it's quite extraordinary. So we had, and that was luck, because when we took over, the big building blocks around WPP were JWT, then Ogilvy, then we got into trouble. We're going to talk about mistakes, and I can go through that. Then Y&R, then Gray. And then you could say things like Taylor Nelson, Millward Brown and things. But the fundamental building blocks, a lot of those companies had very powerful businesses, agency businesses in South America, very powerful businesses, obviously, in Europe, very powerful businesses in Africa, actually. South Africa was, super, Robin Putter and people like that, super good in creatively and strategically in the industry, really good people. Then, through to Middle East and Asia, and not just China and India, but, from Japan through to Australia and New Zealand. So I think you have to have, a far-flung, so travel, which puts great strain, not just on you
Travel's
physically,
the hardest thing.
but also from a family point of view. You have a family, a family point of view. And it means you have to make decisions on time, on timing, and how you allocate your time. So coming back to the point, I still enjoy that. I find it absorbing. I like the trying to think about what the impact of, all the fancy geopolitical stuff is on our business. What does, when Trump meets Putin tomorrow in Alaska, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What are the implications of it? When Trump slaps tariffs on things, what does it mean? When US China are not getting on together, and I don't think they will in the future, when Vladimir Putin is taking the view that he's taken, when the Iranians are behaving in the way that they do through their proxies. All of this has implications for what our clients do, and whether I was at Saatchi's or WPP or even S4, because it's only $1 billion business, but we have big relationships. In the context of what we dealt with before, it's small. But we have very big relationships with very big companies. Biggest client is Alphabet. We work with what we call Night Shift. You can guess who that is. We work with General Motors, with Amazon, with Disney. T-Mobile.
You've always talked, whenever I've seen you speak, you always, by nature of potentially your role, but probably a bit of passion as well, all of the sort of global aspect of what we're
because
doing.
I think they condition, whether you like it or not, they condition what you do and how you do it. Like the UK at the minute, I wake up this morning, I got a little bit confused because, on CNBC, Steve Sedgwick was saying, gosh, these are wonderful numbers. And then I look at the Times and the newspaper and it says no. So we have to beware of fake news. But look, we're stumbling along here and we have big problems. So what does that mean for the 450 people that we have here in Shoreditch? On the content side of the business, the data and digital media side of the business, and the tech transformation side of the business. What does it mean? To me, what's happening means that we have to focus on the US, South America, the Middle East, and APAC. And then it also means that because growth in Europe is going to be slower, I think we have to be more efficient in Europe. I'm talking about our clients. And because growth generally is going to be slower and inflation and interest rates higher perhaps than people think or we've been used to, it means that efficiency and therefore AI are going to be important. So two things: fragmentation geographically. So it used to be, the area of Ted Levitt, globalization, consumers are going to consume everything in the same way everywhere. I'm not saying it's a broken model, but it means you're going to have to be much more selective about where you build your business. And I believe on pushing on an open door. So if an economy is growing at 5%, you have a better chance of success than if it's growing at 0.
Yeah.
Right.
And if we rewind to I think the story, you're well used to it, but the story of starting WPP, I think is fascinating because you could have started an agency, right? But effectively, you might not have said it at the time, but you started a global holding company. How did you what was the inspiration for that? What
it goes back to what my dad said, which it was choose an industry you like, find a company in it you like, and then build a reputation. And if you fancy doing something on your own at the age of 40, is his figure, have a go. Which is exactly what I did. Now
you could have just started an agent, but
if you're going to build I've always, maybe it's because it was the worst. My mother said it was the worst thing I ever did was go to Harvard Business School, but maybe it was being in that hothouse for 2 years, 3 case studies every day, mainly big companies. I like scale.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. Well, I
like that gives you leverage. Now you could argue in an AI age, from the media point of view, scale used to be the thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not as important as it was before. I think it still gives you the ability in the 300 billion of the $1 trillion market, which is not growing, it was going backwards actually, gives you scale.
Yeah.
In the 700 billion digital piece, which is growing, maybe it's brain rather than scale. But look, I've always been absorbed by that. And if you want to build a big business in your lifetime, growing it organically is very difficult, right?
Yes.
I mean, you could do it, but it's slow. It's much easier. By the way, it's a better, the point that you're making is a really good one, because it's much stronger and better to build organically, right?
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Doing deals, the easy bit is doing the deal.
Yeah.
People think it's the most difficult. It isn't. The difficult bit is making it work.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, all the
Bringing it all together.
all the discussion, if that's the right way to put it, the controversy around WPP and its performance. People talk about it was a fragmented model. That's not true, in my view. I would say that there was it stressed the importance of the brands. Okay, I think in today's age, bringing those together, harnessing them. I mean, the original exponent of what we're talking about, the holding company, was not me. It's often attributed to me. It was a guy called Marion Harper who created Interpublic Group.
Yeah.
In fact, he had a big jet, apparently. He used to fly from New York to London and stay, I think, at the, I don't know which, I think the, I think was one of the hotels on Park Lane. Dorchester, I think it was.
Yeah.
He used to stay there and have his jumbo jet. It wasn't jumbo jet, but something like that. And his belief was you had to have separate agencies to deal with conflict. You couldn't have Unilever and Procter in the same, or
Well, that was
Ford
always
and
the way,
GM.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Look what we built at WPP. You have that structure nowadays, because with the compression on agency remuneration and the pressure, the procurement pressure, etc., we've gone from 15%, let's say, to 10%, and that model's changing in an AI age to outputs. In that environment, you have to integrate it more. If you have 100,000 people, you're trying to pull them together to more cohesive. But what's really interesting is, my view is, managers are paid to manage complexity. Simplification is the hobgoblin of small minds, in my view. Okay? And, if it was easy, everybody could do it. A monkey could do it. A dog could do it, right? My little dog Ferris could do it. It's complex because you're dealing with people, 100,000 people. And it's complex because you have, coming back to the point we were talking about before, you have these brands that have been built over 100, 125, 150 years that have enormous clout and enormous influence. People trust you. What people used to say, you never got fired for hiring IBM. You're in the golf room locker, right, talking to other CEOs, and they say, "Oh, who do you use for agents?"
It's relationships and trust, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Brands are about trust.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think is terribly important. So anyway, look, the model evolved from that Marion Harper thing, and it's evolving now. I mean, Publicis have done a very good job. Hate to admit it, but I will publicly.
It's hard not to.
No, they've done a super
They've done
job.
an amazing job.
Why have they done so well? Well, they have a great leader, or leaders, because Maurice is still there.
Yeah,
the two of them. They have a strong strategy based, rooted in data and with an epsilon, and with digital with the sapient, and they've executed the structure on a country basis. Right? They built that. It was controversial, and they went through a tough time.
Yeah.
We were there. I mean, we were there. For
how
the early stages.
It was tough. It was tough,
Yeah.
but they got it right, and they made a clear call. They said, we're going to do it on the basis of country management with client and capability built in. So they took a call. So I think it's possible to do it whilst maintaining the strength of the brands.
And you've, 33 years later, you started S4 Capital. Obviously, lots more influence, lots more financing. Was it easier? Was it different challenges to you personally?
Well, listen, if you look at the results, it's obviously been more difficult.
Yeah.
Right. So that doesn't mean we didn't have perils of Pauline with WPP. After Ogilvy in 1989, we had a very tough time in the recession of 91 and 92. But, having said that, it was easier at the beginning. I mean, we thought COVID was going to be a threat, but it turned out to be an advantage. But, we have four fundamental principles: digital only, data driven, faster, better, cheaper. We started off, we've added and more for AI, and a unitary brand, going back to the holding company thing. And we thought that would be the best disruptive model. The unique thing about, or a couple of things, S4, which I think are very important, and its operating brand Monks. Firstly, the understanding of technology at Monks is superb, right? And better, I think, than anything else I've seen. So there's a deep understanding and liking of technology and using it for our business, along with data as well. So not just about strategy and creative, it's about technology and data too, and that's embedded in the model. So that's a very strong thing. The other thing is we have big relationships, very unusual for a company. The stuff about MSQ at the minute, right? Yeah. MSQ is 13 agencies, I think it is, of roughly 200 million pounds of revenue. So on average, it's about 20 million a pop. So and lots of very good logos, lots of very good client relationships. But I wouldn't say of the scale that we've tried to build. We focus on what we call whoppers, which we define as $20 million plus relationships. We've got about 9 of them already. And so I think that's the strengths are around, firstly, technology, and secondly, around scale with clients, which I think is key. Because I think clients still deal with too many agencies. We get inbound, and we're not active on the M&A front, but we get inbound all the time. Like yesterday, I got one from South America, which is sort of interesting actually, in terms of client list. But these are clients, that give a small part of their business to all these agencies, and I'm thinking about on the client side how they're managing it. Yeah. And the answer is they aren't. It's very diffuse. Yeah. So I think that's the good news, but it's been very tough to integrate with 34 agencies into.
Well, you
S4.
moved fast, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, we tried. Yeah, and initially we had a strong surge, but we've had to deal with some issues.
That'll come back. And when we sit in this room a lot, and obviously a lot of leaders, not quite as successful as yourself, but a lot of them have sat here as you talk about your career, reflecting on your leadership style. And also we spoke about Lindsay Patterson's in here. We've got Karen Blackett on. So many people that have worked directly with you speak incredibly fond of you. And I'm like, it's like a bit like a
and some who don't.
Well, like I said, a bit like an armadillo.
You're being nice.
Well, an armadillo's like hard on the outside, but soft on the inside. Would you say that actually was your leader, or is your leadership style, or as you reflect? I don't
think about it. I don't think consciously. Well, it is what it is, and everybody says you have to be, genuine,
authentic,
authentic. That's the flavour of the month. No, you are what you are. I very much believe, but my style today, or not my style, my nature today is very different to what it was, when I was, let's say, 40. Yeah. Right. When you're 80.
I mean, I can't believe that. I mean,
all right.
I hope you look as good as he does at 80.
I do as well.
I mean, we do need to know what she's secret was.
Well, it's my mother's genes. My mother's genes. No, look. You have to be different. If I'm 40 years different, so my approach is slightly different. I wouldn't say it's style, but that's by necessity because I'm double the age I was before. So, but people will make of it what they wish. Yeah. Like, I tell you frankly, I've gone through cancer, but even before I went through cancer, okay, I've had 3 brushes with cancer. I actually did a talk at the Sloan Kettering, which I've supported for many years in New York. And they asked me to do a breakfast to raise money years ago. Shelley Lazarus came to it, I always remember. And I said I had 3 brushes with cancer. The first was my grandmother, Orthodox Jewish woman, had breast cancer. And she died because of it, because by religion, she wasn't allowed to go to a doctor and bare her breast, number one. Okay. Number two, my father died of cancer. I don't know what it was. I think it was probably liver cancer when he was 74, and I thought I was cheated. And then third, I had a lawyer in New York, Phil Reese, who also died of cancer. And both my father and Phil were treated by the Sloan. Phil died in 2003, and my father died in 79, and in 89, and that was just after we acquired Ogilvy. And Phil sort of was a father figure. You know, he was somebody that you all need, actually, somebody you could talk to. I mean, Phil was our lawyer, and therefore he sort of had a vested interest in the relationship. But he didn't have a son, actually. He had a couple of daughters. And I think he sort of looked at it, surrogate son in a funny way. Yeah. But my father definitely, you know, this is something really important. You've always got to have somebody that you can talk to that has your interests at heart, that has no subjective bias, right? That you think that represent you, and you can talk dispassionately about it. That's why I talk to my dad every day, 5 or 10 times, because I would say, this has happened, and do it. But the point about the cancer thing is this: after Phil, or when Phil was treated by the Sloan, and my father had been treated in 89, I have this arrangement with the Sloan where I can call the guy who used to run the Sloan, and he will get an instant digital diagnosis of anybody who has cancer in the firm. So I had 125,000 people, well, actually 200,000 people if you counted the associates. Anybody at WPP got a problem that I was aware of. Yeah. And I'll give you a good example. I won't say who it was. A guy was running one of our Latin American operations, and Miles Young called me and said, he was at Ogilvy, and it said he's going to die in 3 months. He had the Steve Jobs disease, right? Whatever the cancer was. And I said, well, okay, why don't we get him seen by the Sloan? So I called Tom Fahey. Tom Fahey arranges for this guy to be diagnosed. I think he went to New York to see them. And this was 15 years ago. He's still alive. Oh, wow. So I think, if that's style, so be it. But, I think, and that still goes on. I mean, sadly, we have a couple of cases currently where we make the offer. In both cases, they've been declined. But we have this facility but ability. When people are challenged in that way, or for their family problems, it can be divorce. It can be problems with kids. It can be medical problems. All these things. I think you just have. So like if that's management. Sorry, if that's management style, fine. Yeah.
I think it's like some people like the big hug, don't they? And you're doing great and all that kind of stuff. But also, it's like having their back.
Everybody has problems. Everybody has issues. Yeah. Right. It's like the duck, paddling, or the swan paddling. Everybody has it.
We're paddling.
It's
desperately underneath.
I mean, life is amazing in that way.
Yeah, but I think it's about, like you're saying, you help in every way, and I think that's your entire career seems to, and life. Like, you want to make a difference, and that's a legacy. Well, I don't know. Do you think?
I'm not worried. I don't obsess about that. I would just like, people say, "What do you want to do with S4?" I want it to be a successful business, right? I mean, we have 7,000 people. So, I used to say this with WPP. On average, let's say there are 3 people in the family. That means 21,000 people, right? Yeah. With WPP, the numbers were bigger. It was originally, you could include the associate, with 200,000. So we used to say 600,000 people in some way or other depend on us. And I think that's super important. And if you can provide opportunities for people in an AI age, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. Well,
are you going to be able to offer more?
Zuckerberg wants Meta to be everybody's thing, don't they?
Well, yeah, I don't think he's going to.
Just he's
all right. Yeah,
he's only 15% of the market. No, he's probably 20% of the digital market. Yeah. So there's always 85 or 80%.
Yeah.
So, but his point is well made. By the way, I think agencies have to get closer to a Meta, to an Alphabet, to an Amazon, to a TikTok. Those 4 are half the market. And you throw in Alibaba and Tencent, those 6 make the market. And I got criticised recently for saying, CMO's job is easier because there are only 6 platforms. Got chastised for that. Yeah. But I do actually believe that is true. I think, you drop down, once you go beyond TikTok at 40 billion, you drop down to maybe Microsoft's 19, Apple 11, Twitter used to be 5. X is probably 2.5. Yeah. Pinterest and Snap is 5.5. So they're much smaller. And from your background, how important these digital platforms are in fashion. I mean, they have different platforms within them, so it's not just 4. There are multiple platforms, but they control.
Yeah, they do.
Well, the industry is changing. Like, I think, like, it'd be interesting to hear your opinion, but it feels unprecedented in terms of.
We always say something.
Yeah, don't we? It's always unprecedented, but it feels now more than ever. And we all say that as well.
McKinsey, when I wrote the first WPP annual report in 85 or 86, McKinsey, I think if you go back and see it, if you can dig it out, McKinsey was going to eat our lunch. And we managed to survive. In fact, there's a piece in the Financial Times this morning, by a journalist who I haven't come across, who said, don't count Madison Avenue down or out. They always make a comment. I think.
I've got a question behind this though.
Yeah.
And the question is, whether that's true or not, whether we've been there before. It feels with AI, with all of the corporate cuts and so on.
Yeah.
If you're an agency CEO today, and I'm talking about at an individual level, like it feels pretty lonely at the top now, and there's a lot to deal with. What's your advice now? And we know some, we talk to them, and we hear what their lives are like. What's your advice for how to handle everything that's going on?
Look, I think it is going to be tough. I mean, it's dangerous to say this, but here goes. I'd studied economics at Cambridge. What did you study at Hamilton?
Geography.
Okay.
Not a proper subject. My daughter's doing chemistry, and she says, I
did geography A level at Haberdashers because I wanted to do English, history, and economics, and they couldn't
because it was
manage the timetable. So I had to do geography, history, and
a lot of time spent on rivers in my experience.
Volcanoes.
Or human geography. I did human geography, but. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough right now for leaders, I think.
I think when I was at Cambridge doing economics, there was a very famous economist called John Maynard Keynes, General Theory of Employment, wrote in 1930. He also wrote a pamphlet on automation and the impact of it in 1932. Yeah. And what he said was, basically, we're going to end up having more holidays.
Oh, that would be good.
I think that's what's going to happen. I think AI automation will result in us having more free time. It's not going to be everywhere because, look, on visualization and copywriting, which have been compressed in time and cost, that's where the rubber is going to hit the road. There's going to be less copywriters than visualizers, okay? They're going to be better.
We already see that,
that's number one. Personalization at scale, probably more employment. Media planning and buying, the algorithms, those 25-year-old media planners are going to be fewer of them. Okay, and buyers. General efficiency, probably opportunities both ways. And the big thing, I think, is spreading knowledge in the firm. I mean, the biggest problem inside clients and agencies is the silos. I mean, you were a publicist, right?
Yeah.
And if you listen to what Maurice Levy says or what Arthur Sadoun says, the problems that they went through were about people... The silos, if you're going
everybody's own kingdom.
That's right.
You've got to operate together.
Exactly.
That's what clients want. They don't want to see your
right. So if you decide on the country model, what does that mean? It means the people who run the clients and the people who run the capabilities, that's in the matrix, are going to be subservient to the country model. So there's already the tension. So, and then they call the agency now as Publicis now they call Leo. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So they merged Publicis and Burnett. They've done it quite subtly, not quite as badly as sticking VML on top of it. Right. But they've gone down the same route. Okay. But they've actually, or John Wren, interestingly, He forms Omnicom Advertising Group. Andrew Robertson retires in inverted commas. Troy Ruhanen moves from TBWA. He's made head of the thing. Slowly, that's a more subtle approach to the end result. But what you're doing is trying to simplify the structure in order to execute more effectively. But you're doing it not in a Luddite way where you chuck out JWT, the baby with the bathwater. Yeah. You're doing it in a way which is much more subtle and much more gradual and well directed. So I think, coming back to the question, I think you have to think about the model being differently. I happen to think the S4 principles, Monk's 4 principles, digital only, data driven, faster, better, cheaper, and more, and a single brand is the way to go. Yeah. I think it's even more so than 6 years ago. Digital was 50% of the market, now it's 70%. Data in an AI age is dominant, okay? Faster, better, cheaper is what all clients want, and more. Yeah. And then finally, a unitary brand so that everybody works together. And just on this faster, better, cheaper, what is amazing to me, and this is truly extraordinary, and I won't say who, but we had a conversation this week with one of the biggest advertisers in the world. And they are still spending 15% of their media budgets, and the media budgets are huge, on create costs. Now, if you think about when I started
working
in the business,
that's just not.
Well, they also use that phrase, and I said on the call, because one of them said working and non-working. It drives me nuts because and she said,
should all be working.
Yeah, well, don't we work rather hard? So, but the point is, when we started the business, when I was CFO of Saatchi's, we used to get paid 15% of the media, but for cover media cost and create costs. Yeah. And we used to allocate like 10% to creative because that was paramount, and 5% of media. Media were like the traders in the investment banks. They were the
we knew our place, didn't we?
Yeah,
the rough mob. They didn't get the creative. They didn't get the Ferraris and the corner offices. That was the creative director.
Yeah, exactly.
Now today it might be 10% or maybe even less, and we'd allocate maybe 5 and 5 or whatever, or maybe even more to media. So here you have companies telling me, and it's not the only case, many cases where their create costs are more than 10%, which doesn't make any sense to me. So AI is going to attack that. Yeah. It's going to deal with that. And instead of paying $2.5 million to a production company and an agency to go and shoot something in Eastern Europe, which takes 4 months, we can provide an agentic solution. Well, not in an hour, but in a few days for 500,000. Yeah. And that's what the market's signaling. The stock markets and things. So your mythical agency head has to adapt their model, in my view, to that changed circumstance. So don't charge on time, charge on output. Yeah. This is an ad. We had a big debate. If you were charging $2.5 million for 4 months, is 500,000 for 2 weeks the right figure? Should it be 750? Should it be 250? So you have to start to think about usage. Develop a sort of SaaS type model on usage. So I think the model has to change. I think the importance of what we do is still there. If everybody's doing personalized ads at scale, how do you differentiate? Well, you differentiate by using your brain, not just the algorithms, right? On media planning and buying, all the stuff that Zuckerberg says, all the solutions, right? Yeah. You're not going to, let's say to Mark, here's my media budget, go and spend it for you. You don't do that with Rupert Murdoch, you're going to do that with him. But what you will say is, to somebody, a validator, that agency will be a validator. Is this the right way to go?
Yeah. We still need the humans, don't we? So it sounds like it's really that's like what's the outcome? So what's the output?
Yes.
And what's the outcome?
And you tie what you get to the use, to the output, to the use of it. Maybe even the result, become more results orientated. Well, that's difficult to do because you don't control all the variables. But I think the model has to change. And I media planning and buying very well, much better than I do. But there are probably 250,000 people employed in that part of the industry. There's not going to be in 3 years.
I mean, there's that concern, isn't there? But we just have to find different.
There is. We know we're up against time.
We are.
But we're going to. I just because we're talking about advice. Obviously, this is very much about mentorship. I think we've got 2 questions more. We do want your biggest fuck up. I don't know if you read your brief, but one incoming CEO. We don't want anything
that I will admit to.
Well, yeah. We don't want any controversy. But
after 50 years of a career, there must be the client or the deal or the something that sits in your mind.
But before we get to that, I wanted to ask. There is one incoming CEO, Cindy Rose, who's coming for W in very short order. But like, if you were in a room giving advice, what would you say for her?
24/7 in New York.
Right.
That's it. That's a good short answer.
That is a very good short answer.
Here, Cindy.
That's perfect.
And then,
and the reason I say that is, if you just think about it logically for a minute, US is 28 trillion of GDP. The UK is, if we're lucky, 3, a bit more than 3. So you could argue the American economy is 10 times bigger. By the way, there's still a bigger concentration of multinationals there, not just New York, but Chicago and LA and San Francisco. And therefore, an hour in New York is 10 times, in my view, at least more productive than an hour in London.
And that's the scale as well, isn't it? It's the scale of one.
Yeah, but it's where the influence is.
It's where the clients are. So quickly then, biggest fuck up. On. What was your? Have you got?
89. We funded the Ogilvy deal, half shares. Sorry, a half cash and half convertible preferred. And what I made a mistake on was, if a convertible preferred to convert, equity has to rise. 89, we did the deal. 91, 92, recession. Of course, the stock markets went to hell in a handbasket. So that convertible preferred became debt. In those days, a convertible coupon, which I think it was 6.7% net, was not non-tax deductible. So actually it cost 13%. So we got squeezed heavily. We had to reschedule our debt. We did it. We went into the 90s. We weren't acquisitive until through the 90s. We grew organically. I mean, everybody keeps on saying, "Oh, Martin, you just bought companies all the time." And that's BS. In those, for 33 years, we did not. And in the 90s, we pulled in our horns and we grew organically. And then in 2000, we did the Y&R deal.
Yeah.
Which I think was an okay deal, but I don't think it was our best deal. Our best deal ever probably was JWT, actually.
And that was a real David and Goliath, though, wasn't it, at the time?
That was, It was 13 times our size.
Yeah, I mean, that's ballsy. Yeah. That is ballsy, isn't
it?
But I always remember my mother and father, when they were born and bred, and I said where they came, the Times newspaper was, well, maybe I'm going to say something naughty, but was always regarded as being a bit anti-Semitic, at least in their minds. Maybe it was, and maybe it wasn't, but it was regarded. And when we did the JWT deal, I landed. I think we signed it on the Thursday, and I flew back to London on Friday night, and I was met by a Pan Am Special Services guy I knew from my McCormack days called Jim Weeks, and he had a copy of the Times newspaper for the Saturday in his hands, and he gave it to me as I came off the plane. He met me at the plane, and we were going through customs, and the front page story was wire and plastic products taking over JWT, and it was a back page and a picture of the wire works as well. I mean, hysterical, absolutely hysterical. And my parents couldn't believe that little Jewish boy.
Was that the moment?
From Northwest London, was on the front page of the Times.
And do you know what? I did just want to finish on your dad, actually, in terms of, we're called mentor, and from what I've heard, and obviously the research we did, and you spoke to him, 10 to 15 times a day, he was obviously your mentor. 2 questions, really. A, do you still speak to him? Because my dad sadly passed 20 years ago from liver cancer. I still speak to him probably every day. Sorry. And who is your mentor today?
Well, on the first, my father said, always think about those who've died because they come alive.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
For the listeners not watching, the room has descended into tears.
Because they're such an influence on us, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah,
They're
it's
part
huge.
of us.
Huge.
My children never met him, but we talk about him every day, and I see him in them.
So, and to your point, Phil Reese subbed for him, but nobody will replace him.
No. Well, look, this is in memory of your dad. Thank you so much for your time today, Sir Martin.
Thank
It's
you.
been amazing. And
Absolute
I'm
pleasure.
sure our dads
Thank
are looking
you.
down on us very proud. I'm going
Hopefully.
to say that. I think so. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. That's all we've got time for, sadly, isn't it, Marco? I think we've just about recovered. Hopefully you've enjoyed the podcast, and if you need a little more wisdom in your business, be sure to come to the Zoo London for exec search and consulting support.
And don't forget, we do love to hear about your mentors and advice. Find all the links to our socials in the podcast description.
And remember, Mentor is a Viral Tribe entertainment production. Don't forget to give us a follow on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And please do join us next time for more pearls of wisdom from Mentor.
Thank you.
Thank you.